Welcome back to the morning show, gentlemen. It's 2025 has kicked off. Supercross. Amazing things are happening in the world. It's great to be back. I know we took a little bit of a hiatus for the holidays and just, trying to get a little reprieve. We appreciate all the fans for being there for us and waiting. Um, but let's get right into it and talk about A1 happened last night and there was some exciting things. Joe and I had a little bit of preview before there, and we talked about the difference in machinery and some of the guys riding machines that we thought were going to be better than they were, and other guys that have come out on fire like Ken Roxon. Um, we normally don't talk about motorcycles, but it's a good thing. We'll get into Mike Walsh and some of the amazing items that he's been putting out on the market here shortly, but I want to just cover a little bit of this A1 first, if you guys don't mind. Joe?
No, Mark said go.
All right. I didn't get to watch all of the race. I got to read most of the highlights. It seemed like Roxon and Saxton were the guys, and maybe the two Yamaha boys were good, but they just weren't good enough. What did you see, Joe?
Yeah, Roxon won his heat, and that was exciting, and he looked fast. And it comes out. I think he came out in like third earlier on in the race and passed his way into the lead. And I think it was Roxon, Sexton, and Anderson for the
Yes.
top four. Is that right? You had a lot of big names that just bit the dirt last night. Deegan Deegan went down. Um, and the Honda guys, man, like everybody in the preseason was talking about the Lawrence brothers and those, Jet's the guy to beat. And man, they what 1 year on a bike can do is pretty amazing because they went from the front of the pack to way back. The guy that was really making it happen was Eli Tomac. I mean, he came through the pack. I think he got fifth overall in the end, and he came through, and you could just see the way that he was riding that he was going faster than everyone else on camera. Just the way he was jumping through stuff, bouncing in and out of the gullies between the jumps. I mean, he was on fire. I think had he had a good start, he would have won. I didn't see the lap times, but just visually, he looked freaking fast. So, good job to Roxon. We always root for him. He's one of the senior guys on the tour, and he's racing a 10-year-old bike, and he's making it work. He did some changes to the suspension from last year to this year, and now he's got a factory built transmission in the bike, so he's able to change that gearing around and get the power working to his advantage. So should be an interesting year. I'm not rooting against Jet and Hunter, but uh, once McGrath wasn't on top, I got sick of runaways in Supercross, and I'd rather see a competitive season and good racing. And it certainly looks like the Honda boys are going to have to overcome some adversity with a new bike for 25, and it's leaving it wide open for other people. So good stuff. Oh, and Joe Shimoda won the 250 last night, which, he looked really strong a couple of years ago. I don't remember him having as good a showing last year. And this year with Deegan going down early on and working his way through the pack, Shimoda got the win, and, congrats to him.
Yeah, Tomac did go down early in that moto. Um, Mike, you're a chassis guy, and you've developed chassis from the two strokes to the four strokes and use different technology. Let's get into Honda just for a minute. What do you think they've changed to hurt the handling of that machine?
I'm not a big bike guy, and I don't know a whole, I'm not an expert in motorcycle chassis development, but I don't know if it's necessarily. A lot of times when these companies come out with these new bikes, they it takes them a couple years to get going, one, two, stuff like that, or at least half a season or something. But I think most of it lies, honestly, in the suspension development. As far as when I say that, I mean just the hours of testing to keep these guys comfortable. If you watch the interview when Sexton was talking after he won, he said, my team was just superior. They've been great, and Roger and I believe Roger DeCoster still runs that team, and it kind of seems like whoever's on that team kind of goes to the top. You saw Webb pretty dominant, you saw Dungy dominant, but when I say these things, look like we're just talking about Ross and having a great showing on an older bike. Well, when you get something that works, I mean, even look at the YFZR. So basically, when you got those leverage ratios and you got those progressions in those rear suspensions, the forks are pretty standard. I mean, not standard, but I mean, you don't have as much. You don't have a rising rate as if you would a linkage. And I think that just getting that shock acclimated to that chassis and that linkage and also the rider is probably what Honda's missing. And I just don't think he did not look like Jet. Hunter was average. He did not look that great. And I'm thinking that Jets just did not look comfortable, and they got to go back to the drawing board and they got to do some testing. I mean, I'm sure they got a lot of engineering in those rear shocks, and and you heard Bubba and you heard Ricky talking about the Jets bike, and Bubba was basically saying it's unsettled, it's not working. So I think it's a suspension thing, not necessarily a chassis thing. But if you will, I'd like to comment on this real quick. I am a 4130 chromoly guy when it comes to chassis. I'm not a huge fan of the aluminum chassis, and I know that the KTM 10 and all their brands all still run a chromoly chassis, and I like that because they're not as rigid as the aluminum chassis.
Mike, do you think that, because I heard him talking, correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard Ricky and James talking about when they were coming out of the corners, like the bike, like you just said, like the bike wasn't settled. Do you think maybe Honda, when they developed the bike, if they're running anything that resembles of an OEM linkage, do you think the bike has too much anti-squat to where they can't get the rear end to settle in coming out of a corner? And that's why they were saying, like, he seems coming out of corners like the bike he's not confident in it, like the bike doesn't seem settled. Is it too much anti-squat, you think?
And it could be. It could definitely be. And that's where the rising rate, I mean, if that thing's ramping up too fast, or obviously it's not linear, because if it was, it'd be, it would be squatting, fairly easily. But it's like when we work with Chad, I work with Chad on a lot of different linkages, the Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3 linkage, which never had been released. But it's funny, just, I don't want to like throw stuff out there, but when we're working with some of that stuff, it had quite a bit of a rising rate to it, like the OEM Yamaha link. And as we went through the years, we went to a more linear setup. So is that good? Is that bad? Some say it's good, some say it's bad, but I wouldn't say you're wrong, Joe. Not at all. You're definitely not wrong. It could be ramping up too fast and just not getting down into the travel.
So, in Honda's, not in their defense, but in their negative, I don't see Honda ever diving in the modern day era to solve these issues like they did in the past, where when you watched Honda of the 80s and the 90s, they would, jump on something and try to fix it immediately for their riders. And if you look at the other forms of racing with Honda, they're not taking care of it and they're losing riders because they haven't solved these issues. When Roxon was riding Honda, he had issues. Mark Marquez, the greatest GP rider of all time, Honda wouldn't fix the problems. The bike is still horrible, and it's falling to the wayside. Do you see them losing an opportunity with the Lawrence brothers or Jet in particular because they won't solve the problems on the machine fast enough?
I mean, possibly. Definitely, possibly. I mean, I don't think that maybe Supercross is maybe or motorcycles is Honda's main focus as maybe it was, you know, back in the day when they were trying to gain publicity and they were trying to gain confidence in the name brand. But I mean, they're building jets now. I mean, you know what I mean? They're running F1 stuff. So maybe they're not as adaptable as they once were.
So they took the cream with some of the engineers and took them to other things and let their motorcycles drop off.
You know, and
Maybe.
I remember that they were saying last night that the Lawrence brothers were doing a lot of testing in the preseason. They made it sound like this was an issue coming into round one, and they knew it, and it's something they've been trying to fix. So I don't know if Honda's sleeping on them, but I just I can't even conceive like what are the complexities of building these bikes, because especially like a 450. You've got a lot of pro guys that are saying the 450s are too much bike. So you've got a manufacturer like Honda that, they're building these bikes for everybody. And, they're building them to be rideable for the average guy who can barely use the power that thing has in stock form. And now you're throwing a professional rider on it that can push it maybe not to the limit at all times, but is twisting that throttle further than most anybody who throws a leg over it. So I wonder if it's harder in the modern era with these 450s being overpowered more than you need to just make a bike that works for the average guy at home and then translates into professional racing. Because they don't have the works rules anymore. I'm sure they can change linkages, but they're kind of stuck with the frame that they've got.
I'm sure that some of that comes into play, but man, I just don't think that their techs are taking enough time or diving deep enough for those guys. Uh, Maybe the test riders prior to this didn't do the job, and that's why they're suffering right now. I don't
Well,
know.
but can the test riders ride like the Lawrence brothers ride? That was kind of like the point I'm making is that like, you can have guys that are like 50, 60, 70% capability ride them, but then you're putting a guy like Lawrence on it who's not only a pro racer, but he's the fastest pro racer arguably right now. So,
Well, not after A1.
it's the bike.
Yeah, but Saxton, if you go back to last year and you watch Saxton ride, he is a tactician. That guy is a razor's on the razor's edge, and he's using his machine like a scalpel. He's not making mistakes. He's cutting through. And this okay, you guys, I don't like KTMs and I don't really care for Saxton because he left Honda, but whatever. He is freaking very, very talented rider. You cannot take anything away from that guy. Him and Eli Tomac are probably going to be your 1-2 for the year. And I'm not taking anything away from Cooper Webb or Roxon. Those guys are awesome. But Eli has a vengeance. He's healthy. He's pissed. He's strong. And he's got a good motorcycle underneath him. Saxton is a tactician and is just going to pick everybody apart like a surgeon. So unless they fix that Honda, Jet's going to be in the back of the pack for a while.
I agree with you. Actually one of my really good friends is Eli's mechanic, Josh Ellington, and he's I wasn't like a huge Eli fan, but seeing him at this age riding the way he does, I'm with you on this one. I think that he's going to be very tough. I was actually rooting for him, and I do like Sexton. I think if you remember back, he was very upset with the Honda program.
Yep.
And here's one thing I do want to point out, and I was just talking to myself about this, and basically what I wanted to point out was that that you got the Hunter brothers that are basically their Honda's 2-star riders. You don't have another mindset in there. So if Hunter's negative and Jet's negative about the bike, you don't have somebody else on there like a Sexton or a Tomac or something like that that's flying or that maybe has a different perspective on the bike. So I think if they do get down some sort of a rabbit hole with this chassis or whatever it may be, it might take them a little while to get out of that, to get back, to get centered again. And that's my opinion.
And with Jet being so young, he could get off the rails really easy and be mentally hurt by this for a while or get negative. And then once he's negative, it's going to take a lot to get him unnegative. And with his
Right.
brother there, I mean, I'm not saying his brother doesn't deserve the factory ride, but I think there's other guys that could lend themselves to be a better teammate for Jet than his brother.
I'm 100% with you. I agree.
I might have got rid of Hunter and kept Sexton if I was Honda.
If that was an
Well,
option.
in Sexton, yeah,
Go ahead.
I don't think it was an option.
Yeah, I think Sexton wanted to be the head guy, and with Jet coming in and smoking him, he couldn't be the head guy. Um, One quick question off topic: the Takati. Has anybody seen anything about the Takati? I've seen nothing on it.
Are you
No.
saying Ducati or Ducati?
Ducati, Ducati, whatever, however you want to say it.
It was there in the pits. They said it wouldn't be racing until 26. I'm eager to see the MSRP because I'm thinking of like a KTM at this point, depending upon the trim level you get, is between what, 10 and 14 grand, something like that, or 10, 5 and 14, 10, 5 and 15. I'm thinking my prediction for Ducati is 18 to 20.
Yeah,
Well,
they got that Desmo motor, that valve train.
mhm.
I would like to have one of those motors to put it in a quad, to be honest.
Mike's like, just keep building dirt bikes so I can keep putting those motors in quad chassis.
I mean, it's kind of cool to have, if you could have a Ducati WRC hybrid. That would be really cool to me.
Mike, I don't know if you remember this. Do you remember hearing stories about the four-cylinder 450 from Aprilia?
Yeah, I remember that, but it's not legal for AMA.
I know, but gosh, wouldn't it be just incredible?
It
That's
sounds heavy.
It, but God, it would be a rocket ship. Even if it's heavy or not, it would be a rocket ship, you know? And
yeah.
I don't know if Ducati or however you want to say it, is ever going to be a force. I think they are running in Dakar, but I don't know how they're doing. I haven't even looked at the results in the rally to see how anybody's doing because it's going on. I mean, racing season has started for 2025, and be prepared. I think it's going to be an exciting year. And talking about the 2025, hey, thanks for the guys covering the Supercross and the bikes. I know we're ATV guys, but the bikes are exciting. We all enjoy them. Even most of the ATV guys do as well. Um, but let's jump into something that's more closer to home. Mike, you've been putting out videos and pictures of projects that you're building. And one of the things that I like is it keeps me informed of what you're doing. You're an innovator. I mean, with your Gen 3 chassis, we'll get into asking questions about that later on in the show. What's the deal with your electric quad? And my big question to you is why?
Why not?
The electric quad. I'm in love with this thing. I think it's the future, and if it's not, let me take that back. I don't necessarily think it's the future. I think it could be an incredible option, and the power is second to none, and the rideability is its own deal. But I rode a brand new Yamaha YZ 450, and I rode the Stark for maybe like a few days, just riding it, on a very low level, as a low level rider. But the Yamaha was fast, but not as fast, and it definitely was not as rideable. That electric bike is really rider friendly, and yeah, I would like to have a clutch on it, just for safety, but it's really unique, and I can't wait to have my Gen 3 electric bike going. I think actually going there to work on the chassis right now. I will have a chassis very shortly.
You still haven't answered the why.
Why? Well, I
Why
think the
would you build
why is
this,
kind of
why would you build this
obvious.
machine?
Because it's cool.
Because it's really awesome. Like I say, I think it's way better than a 450 in almost all ways. To be Listen, we're not driving this thing from here to California. We're literally closed course racing. Why not? Like, it's just better. It's faster. It's easy. There's no maintenance. It's an easy win. It's a win-win.
So if I was going to come to you and we started up a motocross series for it, how long's the battery life and how much do you think it would cost me to go into a complete race ready chassis or race ready machine?
40 grand.
That's exactly the number I had in my head. That's exactly the number. I'm just there like, damn, can we make a prediction first? Because
So
I
we
thought 40 grand.
technically haven't saved anything from the motorized machines that we're running now.
But when you blow up a $10,000 motor build twice a year, you're making it up pretty quick.
And when you've got exhaust maintenance, which is always a problem. I mean, I don't care what pipe you have on there, that thing's always falling off. You got airbox maintenance, you got air filters, you got none of that. It's literally put the thing on a stand, plug it in, that's it. Now, I know we will blow motors. I get it. I know, but here's the other thing that's gonna it blew my mind. But the other thing that I actually work with Lithium Power Sports quite a bit, and I can buy an entire power plant from Stark. No bike. I can't do that with Honda. I
Wow.
can't do that with anyone else.
What's the battery life like? Can we do a 22-minute moto?
Absolutely. And on my chassis, you can change the battery. So instead of you wash the bike, you change the battery, you're ready to go. Now, I've worked on plenty of pro race teams. There's a lot of maintenance in between first and second round. A lot of maintenance. Like Chad's program was a lot of maintenance. I mean, you had clutch, you had fuel, you had change the pipe, you had all that stuff to do. I mean, I think you could change a battery in less time if you had to. And I say change a battery because you're not going to run a moto, come back in, put the bike on charge and be ready for the second moto. I don't think you're going to do that because it's about a 4-hour charge time. But if you had swapped the battery, you could easily run these races. I think to answer your question, I think you could get definitely about an hour of runtime out of this thing. I don't know yet in a motocross quad yet because I haven't done it, but I rode the bike a lot and it lasts pretty decent.
So if I was going to make a woods bike and deal with water and other stuff like that, how closed off is it so that we're not going to destroy it in the muck?
Yeah, I think it's pretty closed off. I mean, I don't think you're getting inside of it. I mean, everything's watertight.
So we definitely you got to go test it in that environment.
Yeah.
Before we go to the racetrack. But if we were going to run a woods race, could we pull into the pits and swap a battery relatively quick?
No, you're not doing that. We're not ready for woods yet.
You think there's an option for that at some point?
I think as this electric motor development continues, I think yes. I don't necessarily think you're going to do that on the Stark with the battery that it comes with. I don't think it's an option. You're not going to run 2+ hours. You're just not going to do it.
So everybody listening in the chat, I would like you guys to chime in on what you guys think about this. I'm not 100% sold. There again, I probably need to go and spend some time with Mike and have him explain things to me, maybe even ride it. But I'm not sold. Joe, I want to hear your side of this.
Well, I mean, number one, Mike is kind of we're going to try to not make this too gushy, but Mike's kind of a pioneer. He builds dream machines that the average guy just simply can't afford. But it's incredible to have someone at that level to show what could be done. I mean, Mike and I have discussed on your show before the fact that, we both agree that 450 wasn't the number. Like, we got stuck with the dirt bike engines, a dirt bike displacement. Like, yeah, it might be too much for a 235-pound dirt bike that has, a 6-inch contact patch at both ends. But, it's not exactly what would probably be ideal for a 430-pound ATV that's got, a foot wide contact patch, an 11-inch contact patch, times 2, times 4, really. I mean, front and rear. But I think I'm intrigued with it. I had a ball. I remember like 10, 15, 20 years ago, indoor go-karts that were electric came out. And when I went to these indoor electric go-kart tracks, it's like, electric go-karts, this is going to be stupid. But they were quick, and they wouldn't even turn them up all the way for most of the guys that would go to the track, because they could simply just destroy them, putting them into the wall. Back then, I'd spent hundreds of dollars there, and when no one was there, I'd be like, hey, just crank this thing up and let me experience it. I'm not going to watt it. And they would, and they ripped. So I like the idea of electric. I think it's got its place. I think in the world of ATVs today, motocross is much smaller than cross country. So, you're talking about a very niche machine. It's not going to disrupt what's going on in ATVs right now, but which isn't much of anything, unfortunately, but it's a good look at what could be done. And as a guy who lives in the city, and is old enough to have talked to people that raced motocross in the 70s, when they say that there used to be a track on every single corner. Every gravel lot could be a motocross track. I mean, if you have electric quads, you're there again, because there's no noise. All you need are water sprinklers. So, yeah, I'm a fan. I mean, it's going to have the power that the 450s don't have. It's going to have a ton of torque. What's not to love? Obviously, it's going to be expensive.
Well, let's hear what some of the guys in the chat says. MX Beans wants to, or is worried about the fact that if you have a violent crash, you could have a fire. The machine could catch fire, because we've seen electric vehicles catch fire. So is that something that you think is under control, Mike, or is it still in the experimental stage?
I can't comment on that. I don't know. I haven't heard of a Stark. I have heard of a Tesla. I haven't heard of a Stark catching on fire. I have seen gas-powered ATVs catch on fire.
I was going to say, I think I've seen a lot of Polaris Razors catch on fire, but you didn't hear me say that.
So I can't answer that, really.
Okay, so that's something that with the future would let us talk about. The other is, people get excited. The fans get excited when they hear the big V8 light off in the stadiums. Now they're listening to the 4-stroke sound. What do you do in a stadium with these electric bikes and there's no noise?
Well, I
innovation is
think
going to be, I mean,
I'm a fan of noise. I like noise. I like 4 strokes. I like 2 strokes. I like blower motors. I like turbo motors. I like it all. I love that stuff. That's something that you don't have with the electric for sure.
So do you, in your opinion, if you break it down for me, do you think this is the reality coming to the ATV sport? Maybe not in the next 5 years, but something that we should look to.
Yes.
You think
Yes, absolutely.
do you think at talking with Stark that they're able to contract a chassis setup so that they could make a production run out of it?
Embargo
I don't know. I've
territory.
tried to talk to Stark. I've tried to talk to them a couple times. I am really good friends with Chad from Lithium. He is the number one Stark dealer in the world. He's right in Florida in Jacksonville. Um, they aren't that chatty, to be honest. I've talked to another buddy of mine about a thumb throttle in Europe, and he has talked to Stark because he developed something. Um, so I don't know if they right now they might have their hands full with this with the dirt bike. You know what I mean? I think they're a very intelligent company. I don't feel like they're going to be doing anything radical like Cannondale did with coming out with a bunch of different options that they were way over their head. I think Stark might just continue to develop the dirt bike for now and get an XC version out and get a, and I think they have that out already, and get a road, maybe even a road bike out. I don't know, but I don't know if they'll ever come to the ATV scene. And that's kind of like why I want to start this development now, because, you know, as you know, you guys are all pioneers.
Oh, you see, he's right in the middle of that thought.
Yeah, no, glitch.
Yeah, he'll pop back in here any second. I mean, I don't mean to sound anti, but I'm just not a fan of the electric industry in a whole. I think that we don't have the infrastructure for it in the cars. You see the professionals out there, if you listen to them, the money people, they say it's going to die because we don't have anything to support it. Um, the gas-powered engine is still far superior in being able to haul, being able to long distance, and we're years and years away from having the electrical technology in cars and trucks to do this in a long distance environment. Mike has uh, ended up dropping off because of probably service, but hopefully he'll work back in because we want to talk to him about his Gen 3 setup and how that's going and get caught up with it. The one thing that saves it for me with the electric bike deal, Joe, is your theory on the baseball field, and let's have a motocross track on every corner. If we get two or three of these things, manufacturers out there, we could have kids being introduced to ATVs again and motorcycles. They're quiet and they're in their neighborhood, you know. I wish that we would be there.
And I think that's where it is. Is electric? None of us know. Are all these cars and trucks in 20 years, are they all going to be electric? Like, if you look at all of it right now, it's like, how can they be? How can they be all electric? Just because of how much energy can you store? Um, the limited supply of the minerals needed to make electric batteries. They're using slave labor in strip mines to mine batteries. So oh God, I'm going to go political. So American liberals can buy their electric cars. Um, there's definitely some serious issues with electric, the long-term viability of it, maybe for big long distance vehicles. But I think for things like dirt bikes, ATVs, it's a good fit because these are much lighter vehicles. They don't require as big of a battery. And, I think the long-term viability of it is probably going to come down to, are they able to figure out how to use different materials like, not lithium and the things that they have to go mine to the core of the earth to get. Are they going to be able to come up with different materials that can do the job that are in higher supply? Because
This is
the environmental damage of doing all these cars in electric is substantial.
I don't understand what this is. Um, Jay Hunt, expand on what you said about BMW because I don't know what that is. Hydrogen,
Hydrogen.
hydrogen. Okay, so you have hydrogen. I don't. I think that technology is years away as well. But that
I think they already raced. I think they already raced a hydrogen car in Dakar, and Yamaha and Toyota, I think, have a working relationship to develop hydrogen as a viable fuel source. And I mean, it's an answer. It's a great answer as far as unlimited supply, no pollution. You know, the biggest problem with hydrogen is though you're driving around with a bomb.
well, same with the lithium batteries in the
No,
Teslas and stuff.
yeah, no,
They're
it's I don't think it's quite the same because I think, you know, lithium batteries burn, they burn long, they burn very hot, they're difficult to put out. But I think, and I haven't watched an electric battery fire, but I don't think it would have that. I think if you blow up hydrogen because it's a compressed fuel cell, it's going to be kaboom. You know, it's not going to be like whoosh, fire, fire, fire. It's just going to be explosion. Um, so that's I think that's the difficult thing with hydrogen that they're going to have to overcome.
Well, what happened to the power source that Tesla, not Tesla the car, but Tesla found way back that the government's hid? He had found an energy source that was greater than anything we have that took nothing.
What was it?
I don't know all the details about it because you can't find all the information. It was buried, you know? But you split an atom bomb, you split an atom and you have this ginormous explosion. Why can't we develop something like that? You know, I don't think you're ever going to get away from oil, no matter what you do, because oil makes so much stuff. So thinking these guys are going to um, let's go nuclear, I agree. Um, I don't
Let's
think
go
you're ever going to
nuclear.
get, yeah, I don't think you're ever going to get away from oil, no matter what you do. I mean, everything that you're looking at in the background on each of our screens, and everybody, you know, talking on these phones, oil makes all of this stuff. So I don't know. I don't know where they get off trying to think that we're going to be able to quit producing or quit using oil. That's not going to happen. Um,
Well, yeah, I mean, no, they're not going to stop using oil. I mean, you need it to manufacture too many goods. I mean, plastics, there's just it's in everything. So, no, oil is not going away, and I don't know that the Greenpeace people are necessarily trying to 100% stop the use of oil, but I think they're trying to stop the use of oil and combustion engines that, you know, put carbon into the atmosphere.
we're all carbon already, so there's going to be carbon in the atmosphere. Look at LA. Look how much carbon they're putting into the atmosphere right now.
Oh,
You
right. Oh, right. Well, that's
They want to smog my diesel motorhome because it's going to pollute. Well, your piss poor governing deal just put more pollutants in the air than the diesel motorhomes across the planet will ever. So I mean, come on, let's not be ridiculous about it. I mean, you know, Joe, we've had this conversation, and now we're getting a little off topic because we're getting on our soapbox. One of the things I wanted to talk to Mike about was that Gen 3 chassis and how the development was coming on it, you know, with the being able to put different motors in it. And I wanted to talk to him about the production of that. Unfortunately, he hasn't tuned back in. I hope that he does, because I want to get an update on that and see where he's at. Have you had any conversations with him about it?
no, but I also heard that while he's building this Stark, he's working on what I heard he's building a gas 300. Maybe that's something he's already built. Um, but 300 two-stroke, that would be incredible. A lot of fun to ride. Makes a cool sound.
I love the I love the thought of a two-stroke ATV again. I really do because everybody complained about the cost of building hybrids with the two strokes. It's still cheaper to build a hybrid two stroke than it is a hybrid four stroke, you know?
Well, sure, because a crank up rebuild is so much less expensive than a four stroke, where you got to deal with valves and cams and all of it.
Well, yeah, and you're not building $10,000 race motors. You know,
No,
they're just not going to be that way. And if you put some limitations on there, you and I've talked about this before, the organizers are never going to do it. But I think the industry would have to say, hey, this is where we're going to stop right here and control it a little bit better. The Gas 300, well, the KTM 300, that is a great motor. I love that motor. I think converting our chassis to that and maybe racing those would probably be better off than where we are now.
I'm just glad that I finally heard you say KTM and love in the same sentence.
That's a great, I have nothing bad to say about that power plant. Gosh, why did KTM have to be the company to come up with it? Really? Yamaha, you
Well,
got a good job?
rumor has it, that Yamaha is coming with a 300 two-stroke hard enduro bike. Is it is it just rumor or no? Um, so that's a rumor I heard, might be total BS, but
Say that again?
uh, rumor has it that Yamaha's coming with a 300 two-stroke hard enduro bike.
I haven't heard that rumor yet, but that would be awesome.
It's just something I saw on the internet. Once it hits the internet, you know it's true.
Uh, you know, we could talk a lot of crap about a lot of companies, but Yamaha is doing some stuff that the rest of the guys out there, Honda, Kawasaki, Suzuki, they're just not doing anything. But Yamaha is staying in the game, and they want to be the king of the ATV motocross motorcycle world. It seems like it.
I mean, Yamaha's doing a lot of stuff smarter than a lot of companies right now. And I would say, and I could be wrong, but just based on some internal stuff I've heard and then what I've seen out in the public space, that as we're dealing with this second economic debacle, probably the worst one since 28 to 2010, Yamaha's faring better than other companies because Yamaha doesn't Yamaha doesn't make one side by side that costs over $30,000. Where if you look at Polaris, the median price of a Polaris Razor at this point is in like the $32,000 to $35,000 price range. Polaris has this mindset, and K-Nam's not quite as bad. They're close. They're not quite as bad. But they got this mindset of we'll just build stuff for the top, 1 to 10% income earners, and we'll finance it over 30 years for everybody else. No, that ain't gonna work. When you start financing off-road vehicles for 7 years, they are because that's the number that I heard from a local dealer. Once you stretch an off-road vehicle loan for 7 years, that thing is worn out way before the loan is paid off if you're using it on a regular basis. And if you've got to stretch a loan to 7 years in order to afford a monthly payment, then you can't afford the upkeep when you break something expensive.
You
So,
shouldn't be buying it.
what's that?
You shouldn't be buying it.
Right. But kids are stupid and they want what they want. And, you've got a lot of young guys that are going to get pissed off at power sports right now because they're all seeing all these super expensive side by sides, and hey, you're 22, you're stupid. I was 22 and I'd like to think I was smarter than most, but I did a lot of dumb shit. And you're 21, 22, you go borrow $45,000 to buy a side by side and you wreck your credit. Well, now you're pushing 30 years old, and good luck getting a car loan or a house loan at a decent interest rate. Like, the
Well,
off-road market is out of line with society at this point with how top heavy it is with pricing.
I think that's why the ATV world's going to come back and flourish because the UTV world's just destroyed us. Mike Walsh, welcome back.
Thank you.
Um, we got a little bit of a tangent when you dropped off, and I think we're getting back on track. We started talking about the Gen 3 a little bit, and then we got into two-stroke ATVs, how we'd like to see those come back. And we talked about the 300 motor. Uh, we heard a rumor that Yamaha might be coming out with a 300. Um, there's a possibility
Dirt
of that.
bike, 300 dirt bike, not 300
Yeah,
quad.
right. Which that means Mike Walsh is going to make a chassis for it, and we're
Oh,
ready
Yeah.
to. Um, let's talk Gen 3. How's it going? And are you guys moving forward? And is the industry or the consumer base buying into that chassis?
Um, to be brutally honest, we've been slow on it ourselves because of different projects. And real quick to that Gen 2 with the two-stroke 300, we are building actually a number of them. We actually have another one on the table right now at 250, but same basic motor. We did a gas for a guy. So that's actually, people are seeing those those modern day two strokes, and they're wanting them and they're buying them, and that's kind of cool. But now getting back to the original question, yep. So where were we exactly?
The 300, we're looking at the Gen 3 chassis.
Oh, the Gen 3 chassis. Yeah. I'm currently building 3 right now. One of them is going to be for my Stark. And I have a customer that's getting, I don't know if you saw the new billet spars, but they're getting a set of those and a bottom. And we had an amazing thing happen where we had the first Gen 3 come back, and he had a 250 KTM motor in it, and we ended up putting an OEM Yamaha 450 YFZR motor in it, and only thing we had to do was change the lower motor mount, which is bolt on, and the swing arm, which went back to an OEM style swing arm. Well, it's a Walsh swing arm, but it was OEM based production SR, I like to call it, and the hip section. So we made those. We literally turned this bike around in about 2 weeks, and you probably saw the hip, but that was really cool because the guy literally didn't have to spend a ton of money, and the change was real quick, and the fitment was amazing. So I think the more that we have out there, that people will see this and it's available, I think it'll definitely take off. Right now, it's been a little bit slow, but it's not really due to the customer base. It's more due to us being stuck in this whirlwind of GNCC components, MX components, trying to fill these orders for the upcoming season, and also this whole Stark whirlwind that we've been involved with, where we've been trying to get this electric thing up and running, and just haven't been quick enough. So I think it is going to pop off real good, and I have seen some really awesome things happen in my actually that touched me on my level, and I saw it help other people as far as with the availability, with the versatility of this chassis.
That's great. Joe, you brought up economy here not too long ago in our conversation when you were throwing the UTV industry under the bus. And
Take
and the economy is an issue. The price of everything is skyrocketing, and it is actually hurting us in the ATV world because we're a luxury item. Um, Mike, do you think that with the change in the policies and the political winds in our country, that we're going to see an uptick in uh, the economy growing and prices maybe leveling off, or are we going to just suffer some more?
What I see happening right now is the real estate industry. The real estate is plummeting in Florida.
Really?
Yes, it went way
I'm
up.
shocked.
When Biden was in office, everything was worth a ton of money. People are moving to my area now. Everything is is leveling off, and actually it's like back to '08. It's dipping, and the same thing with the car industry. I heard that they can't even give cars away right now. That newer cars are not being able to be sold. People are getting used cars because because the money. I mean, a pickup truck's now $100,000. I mean, come on.
Mike, and this is something I've been on a tangent for on the past week, because I watched a video basically on the car industry, and they were saying that like F-150s are sitting on dealer lots for over 200 days. 1 in 5 people can't get financed. Talking about Toyota Tundras used to be able to get it with a V8. Now through stupid government bullshit and carbon credits, and they're sticking their nose in the private industry. Now, instead of going and getting a V8 Tundra, you get a V6 with a twin turbo, which we both know means you're replacing twin turbo by 100,000 miles. And the truck is now made in, according to this guy, watching Mexico. And in spite of all this, while they're saving 80% on their labor, the cost of the car has gone up 25. That truck has gone up 25%. I'm an avid mountain biker. It's kind of my escape from the work life of power sports, which I love, but I like mountain bikes too. You got companies like Santa Cruz and Yeti that now on their high-end carbon frames, they won't even put a rear derailleur cable port in the frame, because they're like, hey, you know what? You want our bougie shit? You're going to get an electric drivetrain, which means if you're a parts snob like me and you want to ride the high-end stuff, well, that bike just went up $1,000 in price. So, I'm looking at power sports, Can-Am. Now, I'm not kicking them in the nuts, because we just complimented the heck out of this vehicle, me and Lenny. Can-Am just came out with a new Outlander 1000 this year. The top end model that we both love is 16,599. Well, it just seems like if you look at power sports, mountain biking, cars, anywhere I look that I have interest, the cost of getting in is for something fun and not some just entry level piece of shit. But you want something with decent performance. Just the cost is so out of line with the rise in income. It's inexplicable to me, and I'm just sitting here wondering, like, how is the world going to get back to a place where mass-produced things are sold at a price that the average person can afford to purchase, not just finance for a third of the term of a house mortgage?
Get these kids off their ass and off their phones and get them in the workforce and teach them to shut their mouths and understand that they don't know anything.
Well, that's
They
cool,
need to
but
learn.
for the kids that are in the workforce, to me, looking back historically, you go back to 1985, I think the industry was doing pretty good. And, an ATV costs 9.6% of the median household income. Today, the median household income is probably in the 70. I haven't looked it up in a few years, but I'm guessing it's in the $70,000 to $75,000 price range. But yet, the median price, like the whole four-wheeled industry, has almost completely switched from ride-on to caged. And the median price of a Polaris side-by-side in the sports segment is now $32,000 to $35,000. We're talking about, instead of 9.6% of median household income to buy a desirable four-wheeler, if a side-by-side is now kind of what the new four-wheeler represents to a lot of people, it's now like 50% of the median household income. This is not sustainable.
No, it's not. And check this out. Jay Hunt just put on the deal. You can buy a KTM full suspended mountain bike for the same price as a Raptor 700. That is ridiculously expensive for a mountain bike.
I love the way Joe breaks these numbers down, because the things he's talking about are the things that I believe in. A lot of the things, and the way he has these numbers to back it up is just, it's cool, man. It's just cool.
A base model F-150, 48 grand. A base model. That's a small motor. That's window cranks, single cab. That's just a horrible truck. I mean, I haven't driven a truck like that since I was, you know, young in my very young. Everything I have now, is got all the luxury items in it. I mean, I went to the dealership. This is probably 5 years ago to look at a truck. We wanted 90 grand at that point, and I just said, no way. I am not spending 90 grand on a truck. It's just not going to happen. Not going to
Right.
happen, you know. But we're a little off topic. Getting back into let's get back into the ATV world. This is why you're looking at Yamaha still building a 450 for roughly 10, $11,000 out the door.
Thank God.
They're still doing it. Your Raptor 700 is similarly priced. Everybody bitches about the KTM pricing, but look at KTM's going under. Do you think that they're going to survive?
They went to China.
But that didn't help them. The price of everything is still too high.
I know, but
That's back to my point. Like, why are these guys all cutting corners and yet they're still raising the price of everything? Like, I don't lean left, but when I keep hearing that the economy is growing somehow, there's growth in the economy, and I see the price of everything going up so exponentially. It's kind of like, all right, who's making this money? Because the average guy isn't, and the cost of everything is through the roof. So where's the balancing point?
It's going to have to. Look at the price of houses in California. A normal house is over $1 million.
oh my God.
What kind of drugs are these people on? You're never going to buy. Look at the billions that they just burnt down. I mean, billions that they burnt down in LA.
Yeah, what a great opportunity for investors, right?
Yeah, now they're going to put hotels on those beachfront areas, and Trump ought to move right on in there and buy it all up, and put Trump Plaza in there, and make it his arena. But yeah, we're in a world of hurt because I don't see homes aren't selling in California, cars aren't selling in California, groceries are super expensive.
So I got a question for Mike. Like, to bring it back to the four wheelers. I talk to all these manufacturers, and for the past 10 years, like every time I go to a press intro, I will talk to these guys about sport quads until they're giving me the unibrow look because they're so pissed. They're like, we don't want to talk about this anymore. But, we look at the dirt bike market. There are still bikes in the space that the average kid can afford to get. Like, you've got a KLX 300. You've got a Honda CRF 250F that's a fuel-injected air-cooled bike. Now, they're not the coolest, but they're cool enough to have fun with. If we look at the street market, a few years ago, there was this rumor that Kawasaki was bringing back a Ninja 250, and they did. And then Honda did it. And then KTM came with a real race bike that was something totally different. But, and then in Can-Am, they came out with the Riker, which not only is an affordable three-wheel, slightly different kind of vehicle, it's a kind of vehicle that's bringing a whole new demographic or increasing that demographic in power sports. Because I go into my local Can-Am dealer, man, and there's so many brothers coming in with their girlfriends looking at Rikers because he can get his crotch rocket fixed. She doesn't feel like she's going to get smeared on the back of that thing when he tips it over because it doesn't tip over. Then look at the personal watercraft market, and I've said this before on the show. I'm hanging out with Kawasaki and they're talking about Sea-Doo coming out with this new Spark. And I'm like, and they're laughing. And I'm like, what's so funny? And they're like, it's got a plastic hull. And I'm like, how much does it cost? Well, back then it was like $5. Now they start out at like $665, but that's very affordable. And I told Kawasaki, like, $5,000. I got to go back 10, 12 years to get one of your boats used for that kind of money. So, yeah, Can-Am might have some first year issues, or Sea-Doo, but they're going to work it out, and they're going to sell a ton of those things. And here we are 10 years later, and they're thriving. Why is it that power sports manufacturers see a need for entry-level affordable machines in the dirt market for two-wheelers, on the road market for two-wheelers, and the road market for three-wheelers, in personal watercraft, and yet they just seem to freaking hate us when we're like, guys, you can't build a more affordable four-wheeled off-road recreational machine than a sport ATV. There's no power steering. There's no computer-controlled suspension. There's not all this electronics bullshit other than fuel injection. Like, if you give any crap at all about getting young people into the space, and I've told Honda right to their face, you guys are so high off the smoke cloud from the money pile Polaris is burning on a daily basis that you can't even see your own customer base aging out, because these 40 and 50 something year old guys that you want to build these side by sides for were riding your dirt bikes and ATVs back in the 90s. So you better start coming out with something to bring young people into power sports if you want that 40, 50-year-old to sell to in 10 years. Why are they so scared?
I don't know. Some of it has to do with the lawsuits, but Mike, you probably remember this. If you go back into the 80s and the 90s and you look at what carried the motorcycle industry, it was the ATV industry. They sold so many more units that the motorcycles couldn't pay if the motorcycle sales couldn't pay for the money they were spending on the racers. The ATV sales were covering the cost of everything because they sold so many ATVs. Now, I don't know where these manufacturers are coming up with this money to pay these high dollar racers, because they've cut their throat in the ATV industry. They're not selling anything, especially Honda. And, Yamaha probably is the one, they're still selling enough units to justify it. I don't know what's going on, with this thought process. It's killing me, because you need to bring it back. Start building units that people want to buy from a good quality 250, a good quality 450, and maybe some smaller versions, like the TRX 90, build a TRX 70. That bike is loved. And that's how you get your small children into the industry and get them loving ATVs, is to bring them through that way. And I'm scared that we're aging out. Our industry is aging out. Like you said, Joe, we lost
So Mike,
Mike.
so I guess Mike, why do you think,
Mike, we
like,
lost.
why are companies like Honda and this, like in Suzuki, why are they so reluctant to get back in the game? Obviously, in 28 to 2010, there were too many fish in the pond, and the pond starved, because when it all tanked, Honda, Suzuki, and Yamaha, the three that we still need, starved for sales to the point that Honda and Suzuki left. But like, why don't any of these corporations see now that the competition level is so low that there's room to get back in? Why do you think it's stopping them?
We lost Mike. Joe, we lost Mike.
Mike, no, come back.
um, in the chat, Joe, MX Beans just brought something up that's kind of alarming. When you buy a motorcycle, there's very few warning labels on them at all. But when you buy ATVs, there's warning labels all over it. So what that's telling me is they're over-regulating it with government policy, in the ability for us to have these things. And that's probably what's shutting it down, is government policy, or hurting it. And we need to get the government out of everything, because every time the government touches something, they destroy it. That's my take on it. We've got it a little off topics. We had some great conversations. Everybody in the chat, thank you so much for being here. It's great that you guys are putting in all that feedback for us. Remember, ATV Talk gives you 3 shows a week. You have a Tuesday audio show. You'll be able to catch that on all your podcast platforms. You'll also be able to catch that on Friday on YouTube or after Friday at 5 o'clock. Sometimes it shows up on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, depending on our work schedule. We apologize for the delays, but it will show up there. On Wednesdays, we do a live Instagram show called Bench Prep Conversation. We always have a different guest, so that's a totally different show. And then there's the morning show where we are right now. It's a live YouTube conversation with industry professionals. Joe is generally my co-host and helps with a totally different perspective than I have. And he is ATV on demand and UTV on demand. So if you haven't went and got your subscription for them, you need to go do that. It is free, remember?
It's free.
Yeah, and helping us all grow, subscribe, like, share as often as you possibly can, as much as you possibly can, because it helps us in the algorithm. It helps us all grow. Um, Dirt Wheels is something you should subscribe to as well. I saw on some posts, people were complaining about that they have UTVs. Well, UTVs were paying the bills for a number of years, but if you look, the amount of ATVs they are bringing back, they're trying very hard to boost the ATV world. So please have some consideration for Dirt Wheels and see what they're trying to do. King
And I'll say this, Lenny, Dirt Wheels is trending up. Dirt Wheels numbers are up. When they brought Jeff in, it was a good move. I mean, I think a lot of the Dirt Wheels core readers are still ATV people. And Jeff's an ATV guy. I can't say that through all history they necessarily had the right person in place that aligned with their core, long-term readers. But Jeff is definitely the right guy for that job. He's a sport quad enthusiast. I mean, he's an off-road enthusiast. He likes dirt bikes. He likes side-by-sides. He likes ATVs. But, he's doing a lot of good with that magazine. And
he's motivated.
Hopefully he's motivated, and hopefully his bosses at High Torque realize that, they got something special with him. They need to hang on to him.
I hope so too. To answer your question, Ian, from Square One Speed, the 250 platform would be great if they went back to a 250 Raptor style machine. Maybe go fuel injected instead of carbureted, but going to a YZ250F platform would not be a feasible option, because why would I buy a 250F when I can buy a 450R?
You're stealing my material, bro.
Right on. Joe has delved into that multiple times, and I totally see why. But to bring back an entry-level Raptor 250, get the kids on it and maybe make it fuel injected, would probably be a bonus. But you don't want to make it super racy like a 450, because then you won't sell any. And then
because you're going to have a higher maintenance than a 450. They're high RPM machines. They don't have the kind of torque that even a 450 has. You're going to rev the piss out of them, and it's a heavier bike. It's going to cost a lot more to maintain, and it's only going to cost you $1,000 less off the dealer showroom floor. Like, yeah, it'd be great for racer kids, but grown men won't buy them. Like, they're going to see, here's a 450, here's a 250. I'm buying the 450.
Right. You go buy a Raptor 250s for your smaller children, but let's get the age restrictions off of it. Everybody, I want to thank you so much for coming to the first show in 2025 on the YouTube lives. We appreciate everything that you do. Everybody in the chat, thank you so much. Please keep the comments coming. Keep helping us out. We appreciate the questions and the diversity in the conversation. Joe, it's going to be an amazing 2025, and I hope you're buckled up so that you can enjoy the ride.
I think 2025 is going to be good. Are we going to get a major player back? I don't know. But, I saw an interview the other day with Donago, who is they're a small Chinese manufacturer. It was from the 2024 AIM Expo from Cycle News. And, they have a machine. It's not the machine I think that we need yet, but they've even said, like, we know that there is a gaping hole in the U.S. market for a good entry-level sport ATV. I don't think their Daytona 250 is quite, it's not the Raptor killer that we need. We need something that's as good or better than the Raptor 250. I don't think they're there yet. Haven't seen the bike. Maybe I'm wrong. But the fact that they're saying that is a great sign. And then there's also, of course, the rumors of KO and their 300 that's over in Europe. Hopefully maybe we'll see one in the United States this year. That would be nice.
Well, I think you will. For everybody out there that doesn't want to see China do it as much as I don't, be prepared. They're coming. They're going to do it. They're going to be bringing these machines in, and they're going to open up their ATV market. And I'll bet you money you'll see entry level quads and a 450, if not this year, next year. So thanks a lot, everybody. Have an amazing Sunday, and we'll catch up to you soon.
Happy Sunday.